Hey, what does she drive? Is that little white car? Huh?
Taurus.
A Taurus? What color is it? What color is her car?
Silver.
Silver? Marion, he's advising that she's driving a silver Ford Taurus. That's all the information I'm going to be able to get out of him because they're loading him up in an ambulance now. Right now, both subjects are somewhat conscious, but not looking good.
It began on an ordinary Florida morning, a quiet neighborhood in Marion County, not far from Ocala, where the lawns stay cut, the porches are swept, and the arguments are muffled by central air. Richard and Sally Langer had spent their lives building normalcy. He was 74, a retired working man. She was steady, grounded, still the one who remembered everyone's birthdays. Their 33-year-old daughter, Christina Anne Adams, lived on the same property in a converted studio apartment. So she was close, but not too close. That was the idea. But proximity, as we know, doesn't guarantee peace. And over time, family tension turned dense enough to cut. Christina had been told she'd need to move out, find her own space. It was a conversation every parent dreads and every adult child resents. The Langers had no way to know that this time, boundaries would become bloodlines. On the morning of September 16th, 2022, deputies from the Marion County Sheriff's Office were called to a stabbing at the Langers' home. When they arrived, Richard was dying, Sally was covered in wounds, and both could name their attacker, their daughter. These are stories of when family turns fatal. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. In family psychology, experts call it the launch boundary, the point when adult children are asked to stand on their own. But for Christina Adams, that request landed like exile. She'd been living in her parents' converted studio in Ocala. Court records later showed that on the night before the murders, the discussion about her moving out had escalated. Richard and Sally wanted their daughter to be independent. Christina wanted to stay. Words cracked open old resentments, and what should have been a family transition became a countdown. By the next morning, it was done. According to the 5th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office, Christina armed herself with a large kitchen knife. She walked from her studio into the main home. At around 8 a.m., she attacked both parents in rapid succession. Richard Langer suffered multiple stab wounds, many to the chest. Sally was stabbed repeatedly as she tried to intervene. In a shocking moment of endurance, Richard, bleeding out on the floor, managed to identify his assailant to deputies when they arrived. He said one word, Christina, and that dying declaration became the cornerstone of the case.
I was just trying to make sure we have
10-4, 10-8, 10-33, 8.
You have what?
like a dying declaration as they go.
Yeah, I told, what I said over the radio is all he could give me.
Okay.
She's basically unconscious but still breathing. He's barely there. All he could say was his daughter's the one that stabbed him.
Perfect.
That her name, he said she lives in the back in the hangar.
Okay.
And that she drives a silver Ford Taurus.
Keep coming.
That's 10-4.
Keep coming. Stop.
2964, 57, 51 to him.
Sure. Turn around. Spin. Spin. Put both hands up. Face away. Backwards.
I think the detective was on his way to him, and I think the LP's on his way to him.
26.
They're still 10-4, Marion. They're working on getting the driver secure.
10-4.
Wait, 3112 was out with
We're out with.
Put your hands out the window.
Alright, want to go over this way with me? We'll explain that to you in a few. Get here real quick. You want to have a seat real quick?
Go ahead and grab her sunglasses on.
Yep.
Do that. Hello?
John, 812.
26.
I couldn't hear. What was that?
Is there anything you can tell me about what's happening?
Is there anything what?
That you can tell me about what's happening?
No, the detective won't be talking with you. I don't really have much information.
Okay.
That's not my investigation. You probably have a better idea than I do.
I swear.
I just got here. You saw me. I just got here, so.
And then you woke up this morning about what time?
5-ish.
5. Okay.
I usually have an alarm either 5 or 5:45.
Okay. And what did you do?
I got up, I fed my cats, and I watched the movies, played some games on my phone. I'm in the middle of learning a new language on Duolingo. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Yeah, me and my wife are trying to learn to speak Valyrian from Game of Thrones.
That's cool.
Yeah. My respiratory rate makes it very hard to get employed. And all I really want to be is a productive member of society and have a job, you know.
Don't leave anything out. And just tell us how this happened today.
I'm a sociopath.
Okay.
And under extreme stress and emotion, other forces control my actions. And
Your emotions got the best of you today? Okay.
like I've tried to explain to my dad, you know, I take responsibility for the mistakes that I've made, you know, the criminal and whatever, and, you know, but for some reason, somebody out there a long time ago said that 7 years was the statute of limitations of how long it has to be from the time you get released from jail or prison until, you know, it doesn't matter anymore. So why 7 years?
I don't know.
That's ridiculous. And, you know, he wanted me to move so that one of my brothers who has a job, who has income, can stay there. And I just was. Check the f*** out.
How did the dialogue start this morning? Did they call you on the phone? Did they knock on your door? How did it?
No, I called my mom asking about the laundry.
Okay.
You know, and she's like, I think Dad wanted to talk to you. You know, yesterday or something. And I said, okay, well, I'm coming over to do laundry. And she opened the door. I was like, well, we hung up, and then she opened the door. And she was on the couch, watching Gunsmoke, like I said. And my dad was out on his walk, so yeah.
According to prosecutors, Christina confessed she was enraged over being told to move out. She admitted she stabbed her parents, believed they were both dead, then tried to destroy the evidence. Oh, she sounds like a peach. She washed her clothes, cleaned the knife, changed outfits, and left. In interviews, she told detectives she wanted them to listen, but what she left behind wasn't silence, it was evidence. Blood, fingerprints, a pattern of deliberate motion, the kind of methodical behavior that makes juries think premeditated, not moment of passion. Later, a neighbor would tell local reporters that it was just a quiet morning until the sirens started. They always say that because evil never announces itself. It just appears, sometimes at the house next door. The call came in at 8:03 a.m., a stabbing in progress at the home on Southeast 70th Terrace in Ocala. Deputies entered the residence and found the two victims, Richard on the ground, mortally wounded, Sally bleeding heavily but conscious. Sally told the officers that she'd been stabbed by her daughter, and Richard echoed it before losing consciousness. Paramedics rushed them both out, Richard to the hospital where he later died, and Sally to emergency surgery where she somehow survived. Back at the house, detectives worked the scene. They found the knife, they found blood trails leading toward the studio apartment where Christina had been staying, and they found the evidence of cleanup: fresh laundry, wet cloth, and the smell of bleach. As investigators gathered statements, a bolo went out for Christina's vehicle. Within hours, she was stopped in traffic, her spouse sitting beside her. Deputies noted she appeared calm, unusually so. At the sheriff's office, she first denied involvement. Then her story began to slip. According to the arrest affidavit and later trial testimony, Christina admitted that she stabbed both of her parents after they told her she needed to move out. She described believing they were dead, then trying to clean up before leaving. She said she went to the grocery store afterward and met her spouse, who had no idea what had happened. It sounded detached, almost surgical. But when asked why she did it, Christina reportedly said she felt pushed out and unheard. Well, I mean, feeling unheard is definitely a reason to do something horrible. Detectives pressed her. And stabbing them? What did that do? Christina's answer, if it can be called that, was chilling. She said, "I just snapped. I didn't want to feel invisible anymore." Oh my goodness. A lot of people feel invisible. A lot of people don't stab their parents to death. We see so many cases where the word invisible comes up. It's one of the most common words heard in interrogations that end with homicide. People who want validation so badly that they turn violent. But there was nothing impulsive about this scene. Investigators would later emphasize Christina's composure. She washed evidence, changed clothes, and left the home believing both of her parents were dead. By the time of her arrest, her father's voice was already fading, but his words, "My daughter stabbed us," would live on in the evidence file. And somewhere in the same county jail intake, Christina was being fingerprinted while her mother was being sewn back together. When the trial opened in April of 2025, Marion County's courthouse filled with people who still couldn't make sense of what had happened in that quiet neighborhood. The prosecution's case was direct. Assistant State Attorneys Toby Hunt and Amy Burnt laid out a timeline that left little room for doubt. Christina was angry about being told to move out, so she went and got a knife and deliberately stabbed her parents multiple times. The evidence included her own confession, the dying declaration from Richard Langer, physical evidence of a cleanup, and contradictions between Christina's statement and her spouse's account. Jurors heard about how she'd gone shopping afterwards, how she'd washed her clothes, and how she told detectives she believed they were gone. The defense didn't dispute the stabbings, but raised questions about Christina's mental state and emotional instability. But in Florida, premeditation can form in seconds, and the jury didn't take long. After deliberating only briefly, they found Christina Anne Adams guilty of first-degree premeditated murder for the death of her father and guilty of attempted first-degree murder with a deadly weapon for the attack on her mother. Judge Timothy McCourt imposed 2 consecutive life sentences, ensuring that Christina will never leave prison. In a press release following the verdict, the state attorney's office called it a senseless act of violence and thanked Sally Langer for her strength in testifying despite her injuries. It was Sally's survival and her father's final words that had given the case its certainty. At sentencing, reporters described Christina standing motionless, eyes flat, as her punishment was read. There were no tears, no apology, and no visible reaction. When the gavel came down, the courtroom air changed. Outside, Florida went on being Florida, sunlight bouncing off windshields, lawns mowed, sprinklers ticking. But inside one hospital room, a woman lived with scars from the daughter that she raised. And inside a Florida prison cell, another woman woke up each morning to the sound of keys turning and the echo of the word move. Because in the end, that's what started it all. A daughter told to move out. a father who never moved again, and a mother who will spend the rest of her life moving through what's left. I have avoided covering this story because it is so disturbing and so sad that I know I'm going to have a hard time getting through it. But the reason we talk about these stories is, one, to keep the name of the victims alive, the names of the victims in many stories, and two, to learn from them, to learn how to spot red flags, and to learn how to avoid becoming a victim. So with that said, I'll do my best here. On May 30th, 2025, in Wenatchee, Washington, 3 little girls left their home on what should have been a normal scheduled visit with their father. They were Paityn Decker, age 9, Evelyn Decker, age 8, and Olivia Decker, age 5. Their father, Travis Caleb Decker, 32, picked them up under the terms of a custody arrangement. He was expected to return them later that evening, but he never did. 3 days later, in Chelan County, authorities discovered their bodies near the Rock Island Campground and an abandoned white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup truck nearby. It was Decker's vehicle, but his body was not there. Only the bodies of the 3 little girls. Oof. The crime scene was horrific. Plastic bags over the girls' heads, zip ties binding their wrists, the tailgate smeared with bloody handprints. DNA testing later tied one of those prints to Decker. The girls had died by asphyxiation. I think I would rather... That is a really bad way to go, and it takes time. I just can't even imagine what they went through. It horrifies me. Travis Decker vanished into the wilderness. A massive manhunt began, one that would stretch months, traverse forests, desert, and human limits. And then, later in the year, human remains were found near Leavenworth that would be linked to Travis Decker. This is the story of vanished innocence, grief, and the terrible distance between a crime and its justice. It's a tough story to talk about, but it's one we need to remember. On the evening of May 30th, 2025, Travis Decker collected his 3 daughters from the mother's residence in Wenatchee for a court-approved visitation. Court filings and media sources state Travis was supposed to return the girls by 8 o'clock that night, but hours passed and they didn't come back. Their mother, Whitney Decker, filed a missing persons report later that night around 9:45, saying this was out of character for Travis not to return. Law enforcement initially handled it as a missing persons case, but as time stretched past midnight, alarms grew. And then the next day, Chelan County deputies discovered the white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup unoccupied near the Rock Island Campground in Wenatchee's forested region. At 3:45 p.m. on June 2nd, the bodies of Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia were located a short distance from the abandoned truck. Investigators determined the sisters had been bound with zip ties, with plastic bags over their heads. Preliminary autopsy results reported to asphyxiation as the cause. Inside the truck, investigators discovered 2 bloody handprints on the tailgate. They also found personal items, blankets, car seats, and a wallet with some supplies consistent with someone living in a vehicle. DNA analysis later matched those prints to Travis Decker. A male blood sample at the crime scene further confirmed his involvement. Court documents show that Travis Decker's phone records indicate he drove to and from the same campground 1 day prior to the disappearance, suggesting premeditation or stakeout behavior. The site itself showed signs of recent camping activity. There was a tent and a cooler and discarded zip ties and plastic bags across the area. Investigators also noted the girls' bodies appeared undisturbed beyond the restraints. There were no obvious signs of a struggle or external trauma beyond what was necessary to kill them. I mean, of course there wasn't. They were too little to fight back. The evidence was methodical, cold, and devastating. A father became the suspect, and the crime scene spoke in brutal truth. For a long time, there was no confession, no witness, and no arrest. The Decker case turned quickly from homicide investigation into national manhunt, But to tell the story, you cannot ignore what came before. Travis Decker was a former member of the U.S. military with survival skills and experience living off-grid. That training became ominously relevant. His ex-wife's attorney later said Decker battled mental health issues, including PTSD, paranoia, isolation, and alleged diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. There is also evidence that Travis Decker was not engaging with required counseling or anger management as dictated by the parenting plan. And if that is true, he should not have been anywhere near those kids. In prior months, neighbors described him as an active dad with no overt history of violence, but court records and media accounts revealed tension. Whitney Decker's side petitioned for modifications in custody due to Travis's mental health decline and unstable living condition. He was living out of his truck or motels or campgrounds. That is not someone who needs to have custody of children. You want to live out of a truck or a motel or a campground? Fine. That is not a stable environment for children. You guys know I am just fed up to the teeth with shitty parents. Don't have kids if you are not ready and prepared and willing to take care of them. Oh, I'm sorry. Decker's phone searches in the lead up to the crime also raise eyebrows. His Google searches show that he searched, how does a person move to Canada? Jobs in Canada. Relocate to Canada. And this suggests that he was planning an escape. By June 2025, law enforcement had labeled Travis Decker armed and dangerous. You think? Multiple agencies were involved, local sheriffs, state patrol, U.S. Marshals, FBI, and a reward of $20,000 was offered for tips. Searches expanded regionally and into Idaho's wilderness after sightings. I wish somebody would have spotted him and found him. I do. String him up on a block and tackle. Some of the leads turned out to be false. They were lookalikes or hikers mistaken for Travis Decker. And in mid-August, FBI and local teams bushwhacked remote forest areas near Leavenworth, Washington. They combed trails and creek beds, cliff lines, and water access. And I remember this manhunt really well. People were saying, how hard is it to find one guy? Those people obviously have not spent time in the wilderness. Up on Cedar Mountain, where I spend a lot of time in the summer, there's a mountain man. He's been breaking into cabins and stealing things and squatting for years and years and years, and they can't catch him. And Cedar Mountain isn't the Washington wilderness. I mean, it's a big space, but it is hard to find people in the wilderness, especially if they have any sort of knowledge, or training on how to live outside. Finally, in September, there was a breakthrough. Human remains were discovered in a remote wooded area near Leavenworth. Preliminary DNA links suggested they belonged to Travis Decker. Within days, the U.S. Marshals officially declared him legally dead. And that's too good for him. I wish somebody else would have found him. I'm getting meaner. The more of these stories I cover, I'm getting meaner, and I'm okay with that. The remains were in such advanced decomposition that the cause of death could not be determined. That's not satisfying to me. I want to know how he died. And also, the remains were scattered across multiple locations, and many of the key bones, like the skull and torso, were missing. So I guess they're assuming animals. But despite that, confirmation came. The forensic report officially linked DNA to Travis Decker. That closed the manhunt, but not the questions. Because there was no confession, motive is speculative, but many lines of inquiry have emerged. Whitney's attorney and media accounts pointed to systematic gaps in mental health care, especially for veterans struggling with PTSD and personality disorders. The tension over custody control, visitation, and unstable living conditions may have catalyzed into a sudden break, which is why he shouldn't have had the kids. The cell phone activity, return trips to the same campground, and preparation, the bags and ties, suggest this was not an impulsive act. And if you're mentally healthy enough to plan something, you're mentally healthy enough to know it's not right. His Google searches for Canada relocation hint that he was planning an exit. Investigators state there is no credible evidence of another suspect. The DNA and prints all point to Travis Decker as the sole actor. Critics argue another angle. Was an Amber Alert delayed? Reports say authorities did not issue an Amber Alert immediately when the girls were first reported missing, and some argue that delay cost crucial hours. I hope they're looking into that further. Law enforcement responses maintain that investigations followed procedure and no break-in protocol was proven. In this case, the motive may never be fully known, but the evidence gives us a chilling map of intent and method. The legal closure came not through a trial, but through forensic certainty. With Decker's remains confirmed by DNA in late September, he was declared dead, closing the manhunt.
The search is finally over for Travis Decker officially, the man accused of killing his 3 young daughters in Chelan County. Sheriff's investigators confirmed human remains found last week are a DNA match. Couple's Jackie Kent has been following this investigation for months and has the story from Wenatchee.
We can finally bring a close to this dark chapter of Chelan County.
An emotional ending to the largest manhunt in Chelan County history for Travis Decker, the man accused of killing his 3 daughters, 9-year-old Paityn, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia.
Our community is now down 3 young girls that would have been our bright future. They're not going to be able to enjoy birthdays, other memories, first dances, first sporting events.
Sheriff Mike Morrison says the State Patrol's crime lab confirms human remains and clothing found on Grindstone Mountain are a DNA match to the 32-year-old father. Initial results linked the clothes to Decker, but the sheriff also asked the State Patrol crime lab to test the remains to be sure and to squash rumors circulating online as the case has drawn national attention.
I know this was an unusual request for the State Patrol. I appreciate them humoring me on this, but we also want to make sure we shut down conspiracy theories. Mr. Decker did not bring anyone else up there and leave the remains behind. This is Mr. Decker's remains. The clothing matches, the remains match. That is the end of the conversation. This is why we asked them to take their time.
The sisters' bodies were found on June 2nd near the Rock Island Campground, not far from Decker's truck. For nearly 4 months, local, state, and federal authorities searched 2,900 square miles by air and from the ground. Decker's mental health struggles, including PTSD and borderline personality disorder, came to the spotlight during the search. The sheriff acknowledged we may never know a motive for Decker's suspected crimes.
I don't think it really matters what his reasoning was. In our view, and based off the evidence we have, he committed murder. It's inexcusable. It's inexplainable.
Sheriff Morrison said he hopes this brings closure for the girl's mother, Whitney, and her family.
If anything, we just hope that maybe she would sleep better at night. She wouldn't be looking over her shoulder. But we understand no matter what, this is not going to bring Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia back.
Reporting in Chelan County.
Of course, the system that tracked him to death could not answer why. Wenatchee Valley and Chelan County were stunned. Memorials sprang up. Over 1,000 people attended public remembrances. The city lit public buildings in colors representing each child. Social media, local press, and national outlets wrestled with the horror. 3 girls taken by their own father in a forest they might have thought was safe. They probably thought they were going camping. This is one of those stories where I say, I hope you religious people are right. I hope there is a hell. And I want to talk about Whitney, the mom left behind, but I have just have a really hard time even thinking about her. She has publicly expressed her grief and called for system reform, better mental health access, stronger oversight when warning signs emerge, and more aggressive response protocols. I don't think I would live through the loss of a child, the loss of all 3 young children. Nope, I wouldn't still be here. She's stronger than I am. Some in the public and legal sphere have questioned law enforcement and child services. Could this have been prevented? Should the missing persons protocol have triggered an Amber Alert faster? Did the courts enforce mental health compliance orders? It doesn't sound like it. And these debates now linger in legal reviews, legislative oversight, and the fractures of a grieving community. Even with Decker dead, we have a lot of uncertainties. We don't know how he died or when. We don't know his psychological state. We don't know his motive. And if he was planning to flee to Canada, why did he end up dead? The coroner has stated publicly that we may never know the cause of death. The remains were scattered, they don't have all the parts, and we most likely will never know. This story, like the one in Marion County, falls under a dark rubric: family violence from within. The difference is in direction. Daughter kills parents versus father kills daughters. Both are stories of the fracture lines in trust, responsibility, and what a home can hide. In both stories, emotional, psychological, logistical boundaries were crossed, maybe for a lot of people. That never excuses violence. In both stories, the law burrows in after the fact, trying to impose order on chaos. But in the Decker case, the final closure came not via courtroom, but via decomposition, DNA, and formal declarations. We tell these stories not to exploit grief, but to trace warning signs. In the silence before the sirens, in the mental health pleas ignored, in the custody battles and coded texts, in the searches for escape, we find the symptoms. Sometimes tragedies are not sudden. They are long, bleeding works of omission. If there is a lesson here, look for the cracks before they open. Treat mental distress as danger, not anomaly. Don't wait for dead children to mark the moment you must act. I'm still thinking about finding Travis Decker in the woods. Old school justice for some people. I'm sorry. I appreciate you joining me today. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. This is my podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. I post brand new stories every Monday and Wednesday. I've got a new podcast coming very, very soon. 15-minute mysteries with Stacy Lee. I will let you know when it's live. And this is our own fundraiser. We are so close to making our first donation. Watch this video on the playlist on my channel called Fundraisers. It explains everything. We're trying to help solve some cold crimes. As always, thank you to my patrons. Your support means the world to me. And thank you to all of you who watch and who listen to the podcast. We've got a great community here, and I am just grateful you're a part of it. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other. And I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.